Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Exploring Sacred and welcome to a beautiful brand new day. It's good to have all of you with us on this Wednesday morning. And this morning, I have a very special guest, and I know many of you have been asking me about when Pat Fox would be on the show, and you're so excited to have her, as am I. So this morning on Exploring Sacred, I am having my dear friend, colleague, Patricia A. Fox. And many of you know her from here at the School of Sacred Studies. Many of you are her students, her clients, her friends, family members. For those of you that don't yet know her, let me just briefly introduce her. Pat, amongst many things, is a seasoned entrepreneur, an executive coach, and former C-level corporate executive. Pat has combined her talent and experience to launch Healing Arts of the Andovers, a holistic wellness center that provides hypnotherapy, Reiki, and other healing arts that complement and enhance traditional healing methods. That's just the very short brief of it. And I want to get directly to the interview. Good morning, Pat.
Good morning, Dana. Thank you for having me today.
I am so happy to have you, and I know that people are happy to be listening in and that you're here on the show this morning. Everyone, the chat room is open at Spreaker, so please do come on in and chat with us wherever you happen to be around Grandmother Earth this morning. Pat, right now the world is a bit tipsy-turvy.
Absolutely. But there, the good news is, even though it is feeling topsy-turvy and there's so many things that we don't have control over, we do have control over how we respond to all of those things. And that in harmonizing both the subconscious with the conscious mind, bearing in mind that typically how we're feeling on the outside or the things that we're attracting into our life oftentimes come from the conscious mind. So in other words, if we're feeling a lot of confusion or anxiety, that's oftentimes where that comes from. But if we want to keep it in balance and we want to change it, we can use leverage our subconscious mind to change the experience that we have every day. And typically a way of doing that, the way I describe it to my clients is the subconscious mind. It has one important job, and that job is to protect us. And so when we're feeling out of balance, it's generally because the yin and yang of how that's working together isn't in alignment with one another. So by changing our thoughts, and it sounds easier sometimes than it is, because when we're feeling anxious, when we've developed a habit that we want to break, for example, or a pattern that we want to change, it's typically the subconscious mind. It can help us to change that pattern, because the subconscious mind only speaks in pictures. So those pictures, if it sees a picture 3 times, it believes that the message is true. So when we're using hypnosis, for example, what we're doing is we're creating pictures in what sounds like a meditation.
Wow.
But it's not really a meditation. It's in fact, is the difference between meditation and hypnosis would be that in meditation it's usually guided toward either having your own experience, or it's a quiet experience where you just go inward and listen to your own subconscious messages. Mm-hmm. Where hypnosis, you're still having that meditative experience. However, what you're doing is you're guiding it to where you want it to be. Mm-hmm. So if you have a goal or an objective, by planting pictures, and I wish we almost had this visually, because I could have everybody do an experiment that takes only about 5 minutes so that you can experience how quickly it works. And so as long as you're open to whatever that experience is, or it's something that you want, it automatically happens for you.
I love that. And for those of you that are listening and you're wondering, so Dana, what do you know about her work? Well, my daughter Elise has been a beneficiary of Patricia's work, and so has my husband Todd through his hospital stays and his recovery. And it works. It works. And if there's one thing that I think we can all agree upon is when we're in a state of flux, it's interesting how fear sometimes is what emerges first from our subconscious or unconscious mind. Do you feel that that's just part of our fright, our ancient human nature, that fear should arise first, Pat, and then we have to be consciously aware of how to quell that?
I would agree. I think that it is, and I've found that whether someone's coming in to overcome an emotional issue or overcome a habit such as smoking, it's typically fear that keeps us from moving from one place to another. And it can be, even if it's something good that someone wants. One of the questions I ask most of my clients when they come in, depending on why they're coming, is there any fear that they're feeling around wanting to make a particular change? Because it's, I think, sometimes change of the or fear of the unknown when there is a change that creates that barrier. I think it's also important to understand that people will come to me and they'll almost always joke, about how hypnosis. So you're going to make me quack like a duck or cluck like a chicken. And I always tell them only if you want.
That's funny.
We don't do that here.
Yeah.
But it's important to know too that all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. In other words, no one can have control over your mind. So if you're working with someone and you create a hypnosis script for them, it has to be, first off, something that they want to do. If it isn't something that they want, isn't a goal that they want to reach, the hypnosis won't work, and that's the only time it won't work. So if I have someone who comes to me, for example, and they want to quit smoking, the first question I'll ask them is, do you want to quit, or does somebody else want you to quit? And I had a client who came who had lung cancer, and his answer to that question was, it doesn't matter if I quit now. I already have lung cancer. I'm here because my wife wants me to quit. There's nothing I can do, no hypnosis script anywhere that will ever make that person quit smoking. So it's got to be someone who's open and ready and wanting to receive the help that they're getting.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, too, we could all do self-hypnosis to change our perspective on any situation or break any habit that we choose to. But very often it's easier to have support from someone else, and that's why people will seek help with it. But quite literally, it should be something that we, or it is, I shouldn't say it should be, but it is something that we can all do on our own.
Mm-hmm. We've got lots of people in the chat room this morning filing in Pat. So good morning to each and every one of you. I have a question about, getting down to the root of something. A lot of times, I think over our lifetimes, we can build up a fear of finding out what our fear is, or a fear about finding out about the original blockage or the trauma. Do you find that in many cases that when you get to the root, it really isn't as bad as people thought?
Oh, that's a really good point, Dana. Yes, absolutely. In my experience, you can't release any blockage in your body, physically or emotionally, unless you can release it. And so when you share that with people, then they are afraid that, oh, what's going to come up for me? And am I going to have that whole bad experience all over? Or what is it going to open up? A release can be something as simple or as little as a hiccup. It can be, I've had people who've said, oh, I felt like I was really teary, like I just wanted to sob, and then a moment later it went away. And I've also had people who are in the chair who've had an epiphany, and it was something that came up, and it brought them back to a memory of something that happened to them when they were 4 years old or 10 years old, and realizing that there was a part of them that was still hanging on to that emotion, and that as soon as they recognized it, they were able to let it go, because at 45 or 55, it doesn't create the same level of fear that it did when you were 4 or 10. Mm-hmm. And they're able to just let it go. So energetically, when we have something that frightens us or makes us afraid, or that there's a shock of some kind, the first thing that we do is we breathe in. So it sounds more like one of those kinds of things. And as soon as we do that, we're stamping our subconscious mind with that emotion. So if we can breathe out, and breathing is typically hardest to do when we are feeling tense or anxious. And so when you start hypnosis, it's always with the nice deep breaths in. And when you're able to let go of that, and what we're doing, the one goal that we have is getting people into a more relaxed state, which is the breathing, and then giving them something to do, which is taking them through the visualizations, which stops all that conscious chatter. And as soon as you stop all the chatter, and the chatter is, what am I, going to the grocery store today? Now the current chatter is going to the grocery store, and then how am I going to disinfect when I come home? But we're stopping all of that, and we're stopping it so that we can get really into the core of who we are and the things that resonate and feel better for us, because that's what the subconscious mind is really striving to do, is helping us to feel better and be in present time. Mm-hmm. So, and it's so amazing how it works, because once you decide this is what I want to do, this is how I want to change it, the changes happen immediately. But hypnosis can be very dramatic. So someone can quit smoking. I had someone who came in for one visit. He was smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day. Ooh. And several days later, he met his friend for a drink, and his friend said, "How is that hypnosis working for you?" And he said, "I don't know. I need to think about it." And he said, "You know what? I haven't even thought about having a cigarette for 3 days." So it can be dramatic like that, or it could be very subtle, so that as the behavior starts to change, people don't realize it. It's like when you cut your finger. If you cut your finger and you go to type on a keyboard, your finger hurts every time you touch the key. Mm-hmm. However, it starts to heal, you forget that you had cut your finger the other day, because it doesn't. So the same hypnosis is oftentimes exactly like that. It can be very, very subtle. And we as human beings, often when we want to change a behavior or change an emotion or a pattern, we're feeling we're not standing in our power necessarily. So when I have somebody comes in and they're working with issues around anxiety or stress or depression, anything that creates a fear-based emotion, that they're not standing in their power at that time. So what happens as you're going through that hypnosis process, it actually encourages you to cultivate that standing in your power again. And when you do that, then it's even easier to make the change. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to get that person to start to recognize that they are in control of how that feels. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, I find it interesting that, when we get to the root of something and we really take a look at it and feel it and sometimes taste it. And as you're saying, standing in your power, taking it upon yourself to be the fullness of you and really looking at the circumstance that has led to something. I like what you said earlier about looking at something maybe that happened from childhood. And when something happens to us as a child, we remember it from a child's point of view. And as we grow older, that doesn't necessarily mean that our idea of what happened has matured. We still have maybe a 5-year-old's outlook on something that happened to them. And I think that in listening to you, there are a lot of things that emerge as we live our lives that maybe began to blossom as a child. So whether that means an eating disorder or an addiction to substances, et cetera, a lot of times going in and really taking a look at what happened and how we can now look at it as an adult is very helpful. And can we talk about that for a moment? Because most people, I believe, when they're trying to get to the root of something, they can find that it does happen as a young person, and we're still holding on to that young person's view of the world.
Absolutely. And I can give you an example of someone who had come to me as a client, had an experience, traumatic experience as a young child, and developed a fear of bridges, or a fear of flying, or a fear of anything that had to do with heights. Now, there are different kinds of hypnosis techniques, and in this particular technique, helping to tease away, because what happened was the original trauma was a fall. And when the original trauma is a fall, it would stand to reason that the subconscious mind would set that stamp so that they didn't put themselves in that kind of situation again without having some fear around it.
Mm-hmm.
But however, 30 or 40 years later, that situation isn't one that's likely to reoccur again. But as we grow older and we become adults, we have more things that we attract to ourselves that make it more complex, until finally our response to anything at all that would cause us to fall, because now we're exposed to more of those things because we're adults with more years of experience, then in that particular case starts to turn into more of a phobia. And so being able to tease that out and understanding that, well, guess what? Once you get rid of that underlying cause, all the rest of it just kind of melts away, because you don't have that reaction anymore, because you're not having that same trigger occur.
Right. And then at that point, from what I'm hearing you say in our interview this morning, is, once we get to that and we begin to tease it out and we begin to look at the circumstances around that, if, for instance, we were victimized at a young age or at any age, and we get to the root of it, then standing in our power, in our wholeness at that point, gives us the added courage or strength or wherewithal then to proceed with, dealing with what happened.
Exactly.
Because it's not just a matter of poof, there it goes, but okay, now that I know what happened, and now that I do realize I'm a grown adult and I can make choices, now I have the choice of ending the cycle, having conversation with those maybe who helped to bring this about. And so what it seems to me that you're saying is it's a wonderful beginning of some incredible opportunity to heal, to confront, to understand, to let go, and to rebirth if that's what's being called for.
Right. And hypnosis is not a magic formula. So that means just because someone comes in with a trauma, I describe it to my clients as hypnosis can be the stool that gives you the support that you need, or it be a leg on a stool that provides support, and at the same time that individual may still be working either with a medical professional or a psychological professional to help bring those pieces together. So another example of how fear sometimes keeps us stuck is I had another client I was seeing who her whole issue was fear and anxiety, and she couldn't, no matter what she did, she couldn't get rid of that anxiety that she had all the time. And as we started to work together, she said her greatest fear was, this is going to, what if this changes the relationship that I'm in? I don't want to change, because if I change, I'm afraid that the relationship I'm in will fall apart. And what was interesting in that case, because all of them evolve in the way that's right for the particular client, but in this case, as she stood in her power more, she realized that she wasn't afraid of losing the relationship as much as she was about being on her own. And she's the one, in fact, who later initiated breaking up that relationship.
Wow.
So it opens up a window of self-discovery. And none of those self-discoveries are ever forced. You can't force the subconscious mind to remember something that it doesn't want to. And it's not going in and making suggestions about it, but it's as an individual is ready to start to make a change, it helps them to feel more confident in going through the process. And like we said earlier, depending on what that process is, it may be that they do need a therapist or other emotional support person.
Yeah, to help them let go of the baggage, or to be active. And I think
Exactly.
that that's part of maybe a misconception about hypnotherapy, is that it's not something that is inactive. It's something that requires you to be active
Correct.
and to continually work with what's presented itself, what's come up to the surface. And otherwise, it is like that proverbial beach ball that we try to hold under the water and it continues to pop up. And I think what I love about the hypnotherapy piece is that it allows you to take a look at that beach ball that's popped up and decide what you're going to do with that. And do you need more help in dealing with that? Or gee, now that I've seen it, here I built a whole great big story around that all these years. I made a mountain out of a molehill, right?
Right.
Doggone it. Or to the other degree, oh my goodness, it looks like I've got work to do.
Exactly. And what I tell my clients when they first come in, because I always start with an initial consultation, is that hypnosis is not a magic wand.
Uh-huh.
So if you want to lose 20 pounds, but you don't want to eat right and you don't want to exercise, you're not going to lose anything because everything is going to stay the same.
Right.
And other times I do have people who come in who are afraid that hypnosis is mind control and that I can make them do something that they don't want to do, or they'll ask the question, were you going to ask me my deepest, darkest secrets while I'm here? And what will I tell you? And what I assure them, because it's true, is that if someone were to come into my office and lie to me, put them in hypnosis, and I ask them the same question, they would lie to me under hypnosis as well. Because I don't have any control over their mind. So if you ever have seen a stage hypnotist, for example, typically what they do is they'll have 8 or 10 people on the stage, ask them to do silly things, and periodically there will be someone who will come out of hypnosis, they'll take them off the stage and replace them with someone else. And when that happens, what that typically means is that hypnotist is asked the people who are on the stage, and there's one or two individuals where they've been asked to do something that's against their values. And if it's something that doesn't make them feel comfortable or is against their values, they will not stay in hypnosis. They come right out. So even if I had someone in my chair in my office and I were to say something that didn't make them feel comfortable, they would just immediately come out of hypnosis.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's fascinating. It's amazing how we have our own protective force field awareness.
Exactly. Well, and to me, when I'm working with a client, that going into the subconscious mind is sacred space. That's really and truly who we are. And when you're doing hypnosis, that's who you're speaking to, is their subconscious mind. And if that subconscious mind is in alignment with what you have to say or the way in which you frame it, because you still have to be respectful of whatever fears they have. You still have to be respectful of, culture, of anything that is of importance to that individual person. And so as you're shaping that scripting, it really is being able to come from a place where there's a bridge, if you will, of trust, because someone is trusting you with the deepest part of themselves when you're there.
I love that. When we're talking about hypnotherapy, it is very therapeutic, and it is something that requires those that come to see you to put some skin in the game and to know that there might be some work that is required after a session or 2 or 3, and to be actively involved in our own healing. I think is something that really needs. I think it needs to be understood that that's part of the requirement of any form of healing. As Rob is pointing out, just because we can see maybe where the point of entry for a particular trauma or thought or belief system is pointed out to us, that doesn't make it magically go away, that we see it. Aha, there it is. That then we sometimes are called to be very active in helping to work through or heal what has been mined from the subconscious mind. Sometimes it is, as you say, an epiphany. but that it does require us to be interactive. And I love that you point out that it isn't the magic bullet, it isn't a magic wand, but it is a way of facilitating in tandem with your client and maybe with their other healing practitioners. That it's I like the way that you phrased it, that it's one leg on the stool to support somebody. And
Right.
knowing that it's sacred, it is sacred work. And just as, any other form, what happens in Pat's office stays between you and Pat. Because it is very sacred work. And so, what is it like, Pat, for somebody who maybe is working with you with the follow up? What is that like for you as the practitioner?
I'm not sure what you mean by the follow-up, Dana.
Is it a one and done, or do people find themselves having follow up sessions or phone sessions?
Yes, typically what I do is you certainly can do hypnosis over the phone or Zoom. My clients tend to come to my office, and what I suggest to people is they commit to 3 visits. You can have a miraculous, epiphany on your first visit or not, and sometimes it's a little bit more gradual process. I have a lot of patients or clients who are referred to me from physicians or therapists. And so when they're coming, it's usually, especially if they're coming for things like medical issues and pain management and those kinds of things, they don't go away overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So reinforcement. And typically what I suggest is 1 visit a week for 3 weeks. And usually that covers people for whatever it is that they need.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally, I had a child who came in who had for 10 years never had a dry night, and consequently that's not something that's going to go away after 1 or 2 visits. I probably saw him 6 times, but after the first 3 visits, typically, if someone isn't seeing improvement after each visit, hypnosis may not be the solution for them.
Mm-hmm.
We use that as a way not only to measure the success that they're having, but also the effectiveness of it. And so in the case of the little boy, what happened with him is that, we saw each other once a week for 3 weeks, but then those weeks started spreading out further and further until finally he didn't need to come. So he had a habit that was a 10-year-old pattern, and it was affecting lots of other parts of his life.
Mm-hmm.
So, even if he came in and he had his first visit, had 3 days of success, he would look at the 4th day as the failure. So it's working at not only helping him to resolve that physiological issue, but also the psychological issue that goes with it that keeps him stuck there.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that, the way that you've helped my family here for Todd, having a pre-surgery recording prior to his last surgery that just happened last week. And in fact, as I was taking Todd in for emergency surgery, he literally had the recording that you made for him playing. He was playing it in the car. He had his earbuds in and he was listening to it to prepare himself for emergency surgery. And the follow-up session. And he listens to it. And so preparing him for the surgery, helping him after the surgery, there are so many ways that the subconscious mind, when it's peaked, when it's called into conscious duty, heals us. It can help contribute to healing. And I really believe generational healing as well, because I'm very much a believer in what we heal in ourselves, we help heal in our ancestry. And you've made a wonderful offer for everyone who is listening this morning. Would you talk about the free offer that you're gifting?
Sure. I've, as we all are, finding that these challenging times have created some stress and uncertainty in our lives. In order to help anybody who needs it, not just my clients and family and friends, I have created, in response to that, coronavirus hypnotherapy session. It's about 27 minutes long. typically in office is 60, but with hypnosis, all you need is 10 minutes really to have it work. And basically the gist of it is that the hypnosis recording is to instill stress release, relaxation, help that in isolation that some of us are feeling, kind of break down those barriers so we feel more connected to people even though we're not literally with them at that moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also designed to strengthen your immune system and assist with healing if, in fact, you have, gotten any kind of, whether it be the virus itself or any other illness you're trying to overcome. Because as soon as we start working on our own stress release and relaxation, right away the immune system, if it's compromised, will start to improve. So it's really to bring some relief, both physically and emotionally, to anyone who listens to it.
What a wonderful gift. Thank you for that, Pat. For anyone who happens to be listening around Grandmother Earth that would like to receive via email the recording, what is the best way for them to be able to do that?
The best way for me to send it out would be email. So if they'd like to email me, they can reach me at patricia.fox, followed by the number 1, at comcast.net.
Okay. And patricia.fox1 at comcast.net. Excuse my typing, everyone. There it is. Perfect. And that way you have the ability to have a little dialogue with everyone to let them know how to prepare, which is wonderful. Hey, Cousin Donna. Kimberly Wink is saying, "You are so very kind. Thank you."
Welcome.
And Sally Fairbanks Carlton is saying, "This is so timely for me. Thank you." Hey, Katie Battle. Good to see you in the house this morning. And Donna and Janet over there in the UK. Tara, Rob, it's good to have everybody. And whether you're in the chat room or not, Pat has made this wonderfully generous offer for each and every one of you. And again, it's patricia.fox, numeral 1, at comcast.net. Pat, right now, there's a lot going on for a whole lot of people. And what is the message that you would leave with everyone? I mean, you've worked in corporate America, you've worked in healthcare. You are such a well-rounded woman, and a whole lot of fun, by the way. What would you offer to people with your years of experience about staying calm or staying centered or taking time for themselves during the day?
Well, I guess what I would suggest is that two things. I know that people sometimes find it hard. It's easy to say, look inside, be quiet, and take 10 or 15 minutes a day, look inside, do some meditation. And I know from experience that when we're feeling the most anxious is oftentimes when it's hardest to do it. The recording that I've done, hypnosis works whether you're sleeping or you're awake. And the reason it works while you're sleeping is because the conscious mind is quiet and the subconscious mind listens all the time. So even if you do something, whether it's the meditation I'm providing or you listen, or the hypnosis that I'm providing, or you listen to a different meditation on your own, if you can't anchor yourself during the day, and breathing is important, deep breaths are, then listen to it while you're going off to sleep at night, because it will ruminate for 4 hours. Whatever you're thinking of when you go to sleep at night will ruminate for 4 hours in the subconscious mind. It's why when we have an issue, a problem, and we go to bed at night, and all of a sudden we get up in the morning and we know what the answer to that question is.
I love that. And also, Pat does provide personal scripted hypnotherapy sessions for people based on what it is that you yourself need. She's able to do that, as she has for Todd and for Elise, and they've been highly, highly effective. She's also available for in-person consultations. And Pat, do you also facilitate over the phone or via webinar?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
whatever works the most. And just to reiterate your point, all of the scripting that I do is customized to whatever the individual needs are to someone. So that initial consultation is also about finding out, where are your favorite places? What are your favorite things? What kinds of things you're afraid of? And we're not talking about spiders or snakes, because I'm not going to put them in a script if someone's afraid of those kinds of things, but it's more if someone's claustrophobic. I'm not going to use an induction that puts them in an elevator, for example.
Beautiful. Rob is wondering, are your offerings covered by insurance?
Sometimes they are. I don't accept assignment on insurance because I'm not a participating provider. However, if there's any paperwork that needs to be filled out, I'm happy to do that for someone. And generally, especially nowadays with wellness policies and with insurance companies, they will cover things like hypnosis, but that would be something that the individual would have to reach out to their own insurance company to determine.
Beautiful. And last, website, Pat, where can people see who you are and what you got going on over there in Massachusetts?
Thank you. It's Healing Arts, that's with an S, of the Andovers.com.
HealingArtsOfTheAndovers.com.
Right.
Beautiful. With that, Pat Fox, thank you for being here today, and thank you for shining the way that you do here in the world.
Thank you, Dana. It was a pleasure being there. And if anyone has any questions, they're always welcome to reach out and email me or call.
Beautiful. Everybody have a beautiful day. Get out there and shine. And thank you for joining me and Pat Fox this morning. Thank you, Pat. Have a beautiful day.
You too, Dana. Thank you.